in the upcoming COP29 this year, I think we are quite focused about the issue of financing, and I think as an African continent, we are, of course, for many times we've been diverging on key issues, but on this climate financing, especially, there's been heated debate on the reforms in the architecture system of the globe, how it works. It doesn't work for Africa, basically, and that trickles down to many elements of financing, including the climate finance itself. So we need to ensure that we read the reports, emissions gap report, adaptation gap report. You'll see huge gaps that I think the COP need to deliver in COP29. I'm Alphonce Muia. I'm actually an environmental scientist by training. Also, I've studied environmental policy as well. I do a lot of youth engagement to multilateral processes, specifically around environmental climate issues mostly. And I am proud that we managed to pull off the Africa Youth Climate Assembly, which was the formal youth engagement mechanism to the inaugural Africa Climate Summit. And I'm actually a lead in the Africa Youth Climate Assembly. It's a rolling thing so far. On the other side, as I said, I'm actually working with the African Union on some of the initiatives, especially on the youth engagement and the UN Environment Program too. Thank you. Africa Climate Summit is a first. I mean, the 2023 version was the first convening, actually historic, I would say, for African heads of states and governments to come together for the very first time to talk about the climate, how to combat the climate change, not only within the African continent, but globally, of course, with solutions that are Afrocentric, I would say. And it came about from a decision of the AU Assembly, the 36th ordinary session of the heads of states in Addis. That was February. I actually happened to be there in Addis, and immediately after this announcement came, it actually came along with an acceptance of the offer of the government of Kenya and His Excellency President William Ruto to host the inaugural Africa Climate Summit. Great. As we've just said, that after the decision of the heads of states in Addis during the annual assembly, we realized that, well, the governments are coalescing around this issue of climate change from the African perspective for the very first time. But of course, it was a point of concern that seems that in the decision itself and the documents that are coming along, there seems not to be something well cut out for young people. And definitely, African continent, the median age is 19. So what are you doing when you're not carrying the masses with you? And we just took a decision, I mean, our initiative to come up with a formal youth engagement mechanism to this climate summit process. And good thing is that we actually engaged with the department that was mandated to take charge with the Africa Climate Summit within the Secretariat of the African Union Commission. And the director there, is called Hassan Nyambe, was very, very happy to actually support us from that perspective. And then again, we came to the government of Kenya through the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry here. We talked with the CS, the Cabinet Secretary, Soipan Tuya, with the PS in the State Department, Engineer Festus Ngeno. They were so glad to actually even do a letter showing that, you know what, we are agreeing that there is a secretariat into place to spearhead formal youth engagement mechanism to the Africa Climate Summit, and this is what we call the Africa Youth Climate Assembly. So in that, then it was actually really validated, and we got to be part of the secretariat that was even spearheading the whole Africa Climate Summit. We were actually operating from the 316 Upper Hill Chambers. Great that at the time we even worked closely with Jacob's Ladder, with Sela, and it was quite a great time actually to not only work with young people here in Kenya, with the governments, especially the government of Kenya, the African Union, but with young people from across the continent, where we managed to do consultations, reaching out to young people from every nook and cranny of the continent and listen to them. What is it that we know about this climate crisis? How are the young people affected? What are the solutions they are bringing to the table? So one of the main objectives of the Africa Youth Climate Assembly was to position young people in the African continent as one of the biggest resources that the continent has. Not like young people as are known in most of the quarters as people who are just complaining, but young people who are bringing solutions, and they're just demanding for enabling environment, deservedly so. So these are the pillars through which the Africa Youth Climate Assembly was created. And we managed, from the consultations that we managed to do from all the regions and majority of the countries, we put them together in a declaration, actually. So we had the Africa Youth Climate Assembly declaration. And if you look at that declaration, we had 11 highlights that young people were feeling like we need this, so that then it serves as an enabling environment for young people actually to bring a lot of value for them to thrive in bringing their solutions to combating climate crisis. And we presented this declaration to heads of states and who are present in the Africa Climate Summit at the closing segment of the Africa Climate Summit. The President of Kenya and the President of African Development Bank came to our last day of because it was a 3-day event. They came, they sat on a 4-hour panel receiving questions directly from young people from across the continent. So by that, I think this was a very structured way of young people presenting their, their demands, their policy demands, but also presenting their solutions and shifting from the narrative of victimhood that has been to a narrative of we are already doing a lot. So we are here actually to support the government, not as antagonists as many people have seen, I think. COP literally means the Conference of Parties within the UN Framework Convention on Climate Change. This is the highest level decision-making organ within the convention. And it convenes every year. Last year we had the COP28. And in this COP28, one of the key highlights I would actually focus on is its recognition of the core of our, the causal reason for the climate change as we see. And this is the fossil fuels as we know them. But then another thing that I saw there quite impactful is that announcement of a pledge that came along, signed by 123 countries to triple the renewable energy by 2030. I think that also quite aligns with the commitments that we received from Africa Climate Summit in Nairobi, because the heads of states here actually had a higher ambition of ensuring that we have 5 times more renewable energy like establishments in Africa by 2030, from around 50 something gigawatts to over 300 by 2030. That's many times. And through that, then we see here in African continent being the continent that has huge potential for renewable energy investment. Here our climate is really good. So I think that quite resonates with the outcomes of the Africa Climate Summits. and also the youth. The youth need to, no economy grows in the dark. I think that has been said before. So if young people really have to create jobs and whatnot, we need energy. Well, I will actually give an example with a friend who is doing eco heat initiatives in the coast, and eco freezer or something like that. So how we know Africa is that we have over 600 million people without access to electricity. Almost a billion don't have access to clean cooking. So what my friend is doing in the coast is that he's using solar powered cooking materials. So by that, then you'll see there's a lot of investment given the enabling environment that from the policy world that we are seeing to direct programs and initiatives, especially those who are led by young people. So by that, I can see trickle effect from, I'm a policy student myself, or rather policy expert. Whatever policy does is to ensure that we have enabling environment. When the policies are good, then having a trickle down to grassroots implementation becomes very easy. In the upcoming COP29 this year, I think we are quite focused about the issue of financing, and I think as an African continent, we are, of course, for many times we've been diverging on key issues, but on this climate financing, especially, there's been heated debate on the reforms in the architecture system of the globe, how it works. It doesn't work for Africa, basically, and that trickles down to many elements of financing, including the climate finance itself. So we need to ensure that we read the reports, emissions gap report, adaptation gap report. You'll see huge gaps that I think the COP need to deliver in COP29. And then we also need to see in the Africa Climate Summit that is coming up, now bold voice about empowering our young people. I think young people have almost all the solutions that we need to get out of this woods that we find ourselves in. But then are we really ensuring that they have finances in accessible way? Because we may have finances, yes, but they are not accessible to young people. So I think from the African perspective, we need to start off that discussion and have broad language in the outcomes. And then what I can tell young people out there is that we have to stand out, and we have to ensure that we are heard. Be seen, be heard. It starts from organizing ourselves properly, supporting ourselves, but also ensuring that we channel our issues in a unified way. But we don't still need to wait. We should already be tackling this climate crisis ourselves from what we have already, and then from that, then we can be empowered and promoted further for scaling up. Thank you.